Hey everyone, it's Matt here, the TokuDragon, and today I'm going to be doing a review on Shin Kamen Rider. But first things first, I do want to mention that this is going to be a spoiler-free review, so no spoilers throughout the video. We'll be talking about certain themes and whatnot, but because of the fact that there are so many of you out there who've yet to see the film, and you might be watching this wondering if you should see the film or not, I definitely will be talking about this with zero spoilers. Yes, talking about themes, but I will not be even mentioning certain characters that are in this movie, because if they haven't appeared in the trailers or haven't really done a lot of just kind of cameos, basically cameos, but like appearances in different trailers or other forms of media, I'm just not going to mention them, just in the off chance that you have or haven't seen any of those. So if you're down in the comment section and you want to talk about this movie, please do, but please don't mention spoilers. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing is that I actually got to see it in person, as if you got to see it, you got to see it in person. So in theaters, and I went there with Tristan. You might know him from this channel or from Those Guys Play channel. Those guys on the radio channel. He's been on a bunch of different stuff. He's been one of my closest friends for years now, and I got him someone in the Kamen Rider. He was on tokusatsu on this channel, so that's kind of how I got him into Kamen Rider a bit more, and he definitely enjoyed the film as well. I really enjoyed the film. Not going to get into it just yet because I do want to talk about the crowd at my theater. It actually was a decent crowd. Not only a decent amount of people there. It didn't fill up the whole theater, sadly, but there were still a decent amount of people there, and everyone was so kind, and I think that's what was so cool, because if you've been online, you've been on Twitter recently, you saw a lot of people saying, please, if you go to the theater, don't, you bring your belts, fine, but take out the batteries, don't put on, don't bring anything that's looks like a gun or a weapon or something like that, because, a lot of course, Kamen Rider toys, or really in general, Toku toys, look like weapons, so, people were saying that a lot, and I was sitting here and I was really worried. I was like, oh God, what's this going to look like when I go into the theater? And honestly, so many cool people. Everyone was so kind and sweet. It really felt like I was there with a community, and I was there obviously with a community that, have similar interests to me, but it just felt like we were really going there just to enjoy the movie, not to try to be like the class clown type and, make, just fun of the film, or try to act like you are the target of the, of what everyone is there for. It was just a beautiful moment to be there with everyone. The only time something happened that I heard, someone audibly say something outside of some wincing, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but outside of that, I saw one person say something, and honestly, it was a beautiful moment, because it was a reaction, just kind of like people wincing or going oh, it was a reaction. It wasn't someone trying to really find the funniest thing to say. A character appeared on screen and did something that was just really cool, right? Just to keep it very vague. And from that, someone whispered, and I heard them, they said, "My boy." And I was like, yeah, man, same. So it was just, it was just a bunch of people enjoying the moment, being in the moment, and I loved it so much. What I didn't love, however, and Toei has a bad habit of doing this in their marketing because they think that everybody wants this, they played 3 15-second teaser trailers before the film. And Tristan, who came with me, avoided all trailers, I think. Or at the very least, if he saw them, he didn't see them subtitled. And, it's been so long, even after doing all these trailer reactions, I kind of forgot about certain things that were in the trailers. And they showed so many spoilers for what was coming in the movie. And I just sat there and I was like, why? We're about to see this movie. You show 3 15-second trailers that are subbed in a row, and then they play them on a second loop because they're also playing that Fathom Events trailer. If you've ever been to a Fathom Events, you just kind of see a guy come out of the theater like, hey, I'm a human person just like you, and I enjoy movies just like you, a human person. And then it just keeps on going on. It's just a couple just going, wow, we love movie night, especially going to movies at movie night on movie night. Boy, I love watching movies at home like a big stupid idiot, said no one ever. And so it's just, and there's nothing against the actors, it's just that they're trying to tell them, be a relatable human person, while saying things that are the most not relatable human person things that people say. So it's just, if you've been to a Fathom Events, you've seen this trailer. And so, in playing that and doing that loop, they also end up playing these trailers as well. So if you're trying to go into this completely cold, I would highly suggest just showing up at 7 7 on the dot, but be sure to show up at 7 on the dot because there aren't a bunch of trailers before. Like, this movie is going to start at 7, you're going to see it at 7, and it's extremely fast-paced at first. Like, this movie has no qualms about getting shit done and getting it done quick. And, you know, with that pacing, I would argue that Shin Ultraman kind of had similar pacing, and I won't be doing any, you know, no spoilers for Shin Ultraman or for Shin Godzilla either, but I do want to touch on them briefly because, of course, this is a Anno trilogy, not in continuity, by the way. Yes, some actors from Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman are in this film, but none of them are reprising their roles. I'm just telling you right now, none of them are. You're going to see them, you're going to think, oh, is that? Yes, it is the actor, it is not the character. Just, you know, want you to, don't be disappointed if you see a, you know, an actor and you're like, no, it's gonna be so and so, and then it's not. So just making sure that you do know that going in. But still, when it comes to, you know, Shin Ultraman, yes, they also kind of did things at a really fast pace, kind of showing just, you know, things that are constantly happening to this organization. While they're doing that, though, something that they did different than this movie is each character was a new character for the film. So they really weren't trying to do the original cast, you know, just, or the original characters in a modern day setting. It was just a whole scenario in a modern day setting. But obviously outside of Ultraman. But when it comes to this film with Shin Kamen Rider, they are using the same characters, but what I find fascinating is, and this is something that I think Anno is really good at, not only does he get Kamen Rider just like, you know, as like a property, but he understands it as a concept and the morality of Kamen Rider, the character. And so even though this version of Takeshi Hongo is not the same version that you've seen both in the show or from what I've heard in the manga, and I do have the manga, I should read it at some point, but when it comes to, especially do a review on this channel, but when it comes to the character of Takeshi Hongo, he is still, in my opinion, Takeshi Hongo. Even if he looks different, even if he acts differently, it still feels like something that Hongo would do in this situation, because above all, when it comes to the character of Kamen Rider, it is a character, at least especially Shao era, it is a character who works alone, it is of solitude, it is of sacrifice, but it is of looking at all of that and seeing that there is hope, and seeing that even with that sacrifice, he will be doing it for the greater good. The greater good, by the way, being people and their lives. Not a concept of justice, not a concept of righteousness, but for people to live on and be able to continue their lives. A sacrifice, you know, will be necessary, and, you know, there are sacrifices throughout the film. This is not a happy-go-lucky film. It is a Kamen Rider film. So, another thing to mention as well, by the way, is that, and I have my notes here, I should probably check them sooner rather than later, there is gore in the film. So if you're someone who is not a big fan of gore, do be wary of that. They're not shy about the gore. There is gore. Now, it is done not to be gleeful about it, not to show that it is a fun, happy thing. It is, there are reasons for it, and it is not, you know, a happy-go-lucky kind of gore that you might see in like a Tarantino film. No, this kind of gore is done to show the atrocity of the gore, but it's gore. You're going to be watching it. So if you're sitting there and you're like, well, Matt, I don't know if I want to see someone's skull get caved in. Well, you don't have to go see the film, or look away. I would highly suggest looking away. Nothing wrong with it. I definitely, you know, have gone to movies with people or just watched movies with people where I've had to look at them, friends of mine, really close friends, girlfriends, just look at them and go, you should look away right now. Like, you're about to, you should look away. And it's just, it's either like a neck snapping sound or just, again, just gratuitous gore. But in this case, again, it was done in a way that I think really fit the film and really helped the film. But it's still gore, so do be advised. So I have here in my notes Britishisms. So we know the translator is Chad Mullane, and I didn't know where he was from at the time. I just saw that there were certain things that were used, like I can't think of the exact terms that were used as of this time, but you'll see them when you watch them. You'll go, you know, if you're from America like I am, and, you know, this movie's only out in the U.S. right now, outside of obviously Japan, but translated only out in the U.S. So you're watching it and you're like, that's a phrase I've never heard before, or oh, that's an interesting way to word this. And I was a little confused. I thought that they were Britishisms, but no. Chad Mullane, who was actually credited at the end of the film, which I think is freaking fantastic. We need this more. We need translators to be credited more, to see their names up in the credits of the film. Absolutely fantastic. So when his name was there, I was like, okay, I'm going to write this down and look him up later. He's actually Australian, and it's super cool that he was able to do this and again have his name out like this. Like, this is something that needs to happen more. But yeah, no, he's definitely Australian. Like, just some of the wording and phrases used, I was squinting. I was like, that's not Merca. It's just, I was like, this is so interesting. Especially getting, an Australian translator, because this isn't coming out in Australia anytime soon, as far as I know. So, a little odd, because again, like, when it comes to having translators from other, and he's an accomplished translator, but still, him not being American, he's going to use certain terms that are going to be probably local to Australia. So, any Australian fans, if you want to see this movie, you might see a few terms that you're like, I know that term. But for me, I was just, again, quite confused. Something interesting as well, by the way, and you might have seen me talk about this when I did the Shin Ultraman review. I haven't done one on Shin Godzilla yet, as I only saw it recently, just to kind of prep myself, kind of want to see what the differences is, what Anno has done, both working with other people as well as just working by himself for this one, as he directed and wrote this one by himself. Obviously, so many other people are working on this film. It's not just him, but in terms of directing and writing, it was just him for this film. So when I saw Shin Ultraman, and I again talked about it, he criticized the Japanese government, which, as someone who I'm not, criticize the Japanese government, don't know too much about that government as much as I do the U.S. government, which, in that case, fist bump. I'm like, yeah, sure, man. Like, you criticize your own government, yeah. So when it comes to Anno doing that, he also did that in Shin Godzilla as well. So just as a brief overview, again, nothing direct, in Shin Godzilla, he criticized the government as a whole due to their inaction. In Shin Ultraman, in my opinion, he criticizes the government not just for that, but also for, actually really just more for that, but also doing whatever they can to try to get ahead in the world, even if it's at their own detriment. But in this film, he actually arguably does not criticize the government as much. He actually goes after the happy science cult, which is essentially, to really boil it all down and not give you a huge explanation here, Scientology? Yeah. Kind of like a Japanese version of that. They say, no, we're a religion, and they kind of tear families apart. So, he actually criticizes them through Shocker. And I won't get too much more into that because but again, spoiler free, but basically he actually uses this film as a lens to criticize the happy science cult, and I find that fascinating because, I thought this was going to be, because it's another film of his, he was going to take another stab at the government. And I'm not going to say he doesn't in the film in some way or another, but really, he very much focuses on Shocker for obvious reasons, and it's, kind of updating it because, yes, they could have been Nazis again, of course, and Nazis are an ever-present danger, but when we think of how they were initially shown, and especially having Nazi generals who were active during World War II in different Showa-era series, in Shocker or other evil organizations that some of them end up just being Shocker, when you have that there, to kind of update it to a more modern take, to kind of, especially in a way that, Anno's criticizing another group. In this case, it's fascinating that, I guess he sat back and he was like, well, I'm not going to make the government Shocker, although he easily could have. Although I do think that, even though I haven't seen Black Sun, it may have maybe in some way kind of just been that again. So I find it interesting that he kind of moved away from the government for once, and actually out of this trilogy, and actually talked about, without naming them directly, but just with, if you know this going in, and this is why I'm telling you, because you actually should know this going in, because obviously you probably don't know much about that cult, you probably, they're not in the US, this is a Japanese thing. So with that cultural disconnect, if you don't know that, you're like, oh, Shocker seemed, evil, they seemed different than they did originally, but without that connection there, you might actually lose something. So I thought it would be great to bring it up, because he really, it's definitely them. It really is them, and it's fascinating to see. So I may have mentioned this in passing before, but I want to get into it more now. So out of these three Shin films, I do think that this is actually his weakest film. And here's the thing, that doesn't mean it's a bad film. If you're on the fence about going to see this, I definitely suggest seeing it. Whether or not you are a Kamen Rider or not a Kamen Rider fan, I do think that you're going to enjoy this. I do think that you might end up crying at certain points. I do think that it is a great film. But if you're looking at his other two films, it's not even about necessarily, anything plot related necessarily. Again, like I said earlier, I do think that Anno gets Godzilla, Ultraman, and Kamen Rider. He truly gets it, right? But at the same time, though, I just think that when it comes to, like I mentioned earlier, kind of the quickness of Shin Ultraman in terms of its pacing, and the quickness of Shin Kamen Rider in terms of its pacing, I think that Shin Ultraman somehow managed to divide it better, where in this case it just felt like you were learning so much at once, and it was just a lot to take in. And it's funny, kind of like how Shin Godzilla is a lot to take in, to be quite frank with you. But with Shin Godzilla, what they do when it comes to, now I'm going to talk about the characters just a little bit, again, without spoiling. When you look at, Shin Godzilla, it isn't even an ensemble cast. I would argue that the character in the film is the government, right? Is the Japanese government. Now, when it comes to Shin Ultraman, focuses on 4 to 5 characters, really more so 4, even though I love the Chief, he's actually in Black Sun, but you're really focusing on those 4 characters, one of them, and technically 5, as obviously Shinji and Ultraman are 2 different people, but still you're focusing on these 4 to 5 characters. And when you look at Shin Kamen Rider, you're focusing on Hongo, you're focusing on Ruriko, and when you look at these 2, I just feel like when they did explain certain things about their backstory, they just went through it so quickly. And when they did talk, and it's certain things, just because of everything else going on around them, the pace was just so frenetic that I do feel like I need to watch it a second time. Wish I was free on the 5th to watch it, and I definitely hope that this does end up getting released on either DVD or Blu-ray or both, so that I can actually see this film again to kind of just take everything in. Also, something to mention as well is the choreography. I think that the choreography when it comes to Shin Godzilla was really damn good. Again, just very much felt like Godzilla. When it came to Shin Ultraman, very much felt like Ultraman. When it came to Shin Kamen Rider, it felt like Kamen Rider. But the thing is that when it comes to Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman, it felt like it was a great way, and a very realistic way, to kind of even realistic looking, to update these 2 characters and have them be in the modern day and do things that you couldn't really do, at least do well and have it look well in the 50s and 60s. When it comes to this film, though, the CG does not feel finished in some ways. And it feels like, to be fair, I shouldn't say finished, that's a bit too harsh. It feels like most of the money went to a specific part of the movie, and when you see it, I think you'll know what I'm talking about. And also, it might be because they're humanoid characters, smaller characters. Our brain is wired to know when something like that is fake. So when it comes to Shin Godzilla and Shin Ultraman, there's a good chance that maybe it just, my brain is being tricked, and I'm just like, no, that looks real. Even when it's the absurd and it's something that isn't physically possible, it makes, let's say, Shin Ultraman look alien, and then I really enjoy that. But when you look at Shin Kamen Rider, it's not about, oh, is this physically possible? It's fucking Kamen Rider. Nothing that he can do is physically possible. And also I enjoy the jump cuts that are very much inspired by the 1971 series, by early Kamen Rider. And, even the gore that I mentioned earlier is actually inspired, I would argue, by the first episode of Kamen Rider that does have some blood splat, but doesn't really kind of follow up on that as the series goes along, really kind of tames that down. I say series, I'm referring to the 1971 series. And also when you look at, a lot of references to said series, and also to other Ishinomori works. And when I mention what those references are, no! But there are some references, and I think that if you know some other works that Ishinomori has done, be they in manga form or in live action form, in toku form, you're really going to end up enjoying some of these references and really seeing how they culminate in this film. So I do enjoy the film, just references aside even, I do enjoy, the plot, I enjoy these characters. I just feel like there could have been a little bit more work done to slow things down a little bit so that they could actually, in some ways, talk a little bit more, because it felt like there are certain parts of the movie where it did move me, but I think it would have moved me even more if we had a bit more time with these characters in the way that it did with Shin Ultraman, where in Shin Ultraman I was in tears at certain parts of the film, because it is just a brilliant film in having these characters interact in the way they interact. Now when you look at where the plot comes from, if you've seen the show or you read the manga, you're wondering, okay, what version of this is it coming at? Honestly, it's taking some stuff from the manga, it's taking some stuff from the show, and it's even doing stuff that's completely different, because obviously this is a little over a a 2-hour film, 2 hours and 15 minutes. So you really have to try to meld everything together to make it work. And in doing that, I think they did make it work. But again, I just feel like, the other two films that Anno has done with Higuchi for the first two are better than this one. But again, as a Kamen Rider film, if you're a fan, definitely check it out. I do think it works. What I think doesn't work, though, and this is something that I really don't like. It's not anything new. It's not something that like just started happening with films, but a little bit of the latest Star Wars movie, Episode 9, happens here, in that one of the villains of the film and another character in the film, who will remain nameless, are in a spin-off manga that is actually a prequel to the film, whose name is long and is escaping me, that is not legally available in the US right now. I believe the film is called There Is No Hope in the World. There is no safety in the world? There's no something in the world. Shocker Side Story, or Shocker Story, whichever one of those. It's, again, a long name. And it is not legally available in the US as of yet. I don't know if it ever will be. And without that context, I think that you can still take in the film. But now that I've been reading a little bit of the manga on the side, I do feel like it is something that while it was in the film, it was super glossed over. And so now that you're getting more into it, you're kind of getting some motivations more, and it's starting to make a little bit more sense, where in the film it just kind of feels like it just kind of went through it really quick, just kind of brisk walk through it. Again, like Episode 9 with, somehow, Palpatine return. Now, no one's returning, don't worry, but still, it's just one of those things where, I hate when this happens because it feels like I'm not getting the full film, especially with a film that wasn't released here. So now, some of you out there who might not have known that there's a spin-off manga, you watch the movie, you're like, oh, that felt a little rushed. And now you know why. It just, I'm not really the biggest fan of it. So now I want to talk about the sound mixing. So when it comes to the sound mixing in the film, when I was watching it, during some of the bike scenes, it was way too loud. I mean, like, crunchy. Like, it was really, really bad. I was in pain. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, what the hell's going on? Like, how would they release this movie with, like, I get that maybe, like, Anno really wants to, like, have, those moments where the bike is really revving up, ready to just go, like, into the air. You want to just hear it. But it was kind of crunchy. I was like, what the hell's going on here? So apparently this is an issue with Fathom Events, and this is something that they've done with their audio before. So if you go see the movie and, this is really bad, just hopefully it ends up getting released on Blu-ray here and we can hear a much better version of the film. But definitely as I heard it, I was like, oh God, that... And you heard it multiple different times. I was like, is it just me in here? Like, what's going on? Apparently that is an issue with Fathom released films. So do be advised there. That might be what it is. Another thing that could also be a Fathom issue is how dark some of the scenes were. Like, they were really, really dark. And not all of them, but just ones that were especially dark felt even darker. So it's something that could be fixed if it is an issue with the film. They could just fix it, when it comes to DVD or Blu-ray. If it's a Fathom issue, well then it won't be an issue, in the future when we see it on, hopefully see it on DVD or Blu-ray. Or it could just be an issue with like a projector or something, whatever local theater of yours. So, there's so many different factors that could go into it, but it was really dark at some points. I was like, what the hell? It wasn't, thankfully a lot of the film was not dark, color graded very well, but just at certain points I was like, ooh, that's dark. And not just the content matter. Am I right? Am I right? People died in this film. I'm referring to the shocker grunts, okay? They're people too. Which makes it even worse for Hongo. Look at him. Look at his little face. So it was just, again, so much going on. I really loved the final battle. However it looked, whoever was involved, I enjoyed it. And so I do think that the choreography in general, I mentioned before the action choreography when it came to CGI, was a little lacking. When it came to the actual physical choreography, though, I thought it was fantastic. The last fight ended up confusing me, but then I saw some people's reactions to it on Twitter, and I was like, you know what? I'm so happy to, like, sometimes as a reviewer, I feel like, oh no, I don't want to, see other people's takes on this, and I don't end up watching other YouTubers' takes because I don't want to be influenced and just kind of forget about it because of my shitty memory. But going on Twitter and seeing people talk about the final fight and showing it to me in a new light was just absolutely fantastic. And this is why I love this community, seeing everyone come together to talk about this film. Even people not even having like major spoilers, just like little tiny things here and there, was really cool to see on Twitter. Although definitely mute those words, mute Shin Kamen Rider in that order, just in case you don't want to get spoiled. But from some of the little stuff that I saw, it really helped me see the final battle in a new light. And so definitely look at it differently. Don't look at it as a traditional Kamen Rider fight, but I won't say any more. So, generally though, I really, again, enjoyed this film. Definitely check it out if you have the chance to. And if you don't, really hope that you and I get the chance to check it out on DVD or Blu-ray. Really hoping for a Blu-ray because the movie looked fantastic. And fantastic shots as well. Ano is so good at that. I mean, it's amazing. So definitely, again, check this one out. So thank you all so much for watching. If you like this video, please remember to like and subscribe. Love you all. Take care. And hope you tune in next time. So, see ya.